You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise.
Segment 10. Business Magicians, Resurrecting Joseph Goebbels.
Murray is best known for his book, The Bell Curve. And according to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, they gave an overview, and the controversial book links intelligence to class and race in modern society. Well, that message doesn't sit well with a group of faculty members called Still Concerned, a Virginia Tech faculty initiative. That group is working with student organizations and is protesting his visit. The group argues that Dr. Murray has built his career on false claims about inferiority of minorities, women, low-income individuals, and people with disabilities.
In past segments, we covered prominent figures like Ayn Rand and Jack Welch in our philosophical road to ruin. Next, we will discuss Charles Murray, the author of The Bell Curve, a very influential social science book that used biased statistics to justify Ayn Rand's objectivist philosophy. In fact, Charles Murray is so enamored with Ayn Rand's philosophical framework that he has written a number of articles praising her work. That is because Murray's work is tied at the hip of Rand's objectivist philosophy. But first, we must define social Darwinism. Because while both Rand's and Murray's frameworks use social Darwinism as a foundation, Murray's ideas are more direct applications of social Darwinistic principles. Social Darwinism, the belief that the strong have the right, and some might even say the obligation, to prevail over the weak. Spencer sought to apply the evolutionary concept of survival of the fittest to human societies, effectively comparing human societies to the jungle. So much so that actual human zoos began popping up in places. A practice that is mirrored in our modern-day immigrant detention camps. Social Darwinism was originally popularized during the British colonial expansion in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It formed the philosophical foundation for British colonization for much of the Third World, for the plundering of Third World minerals, diamonds, gold, and oil supplies. And it was well accepted as long as the people being impacted had brown skin, but it fell out of favor when Hitler popularized the concept in Nazi Germany and used it as an excuse to invade and occupy most of Western Europe. But some ideas may sound good to you when it's you that is holding the guns. When Charles Murray's The Bell Curve was published in 1996, it purported to use statistics to prove that raw intelligence was the indicator of success in American society. Its basic premise was that intelligence was the key to success. Whites are inherently smarter, blacks and Hispanics stupid. Winner take all. Murray adds that because blacks and Hispanics are incarcerated at higher rates, they are morally inferior as well. Murray further maintains that factors like poverty, racism, and segregation are the proof of black inferiority. Thus, the power balance is irrelevant, but most scholars immediately recognized the Bell Curve for what it was, a biased rehashing of social Darwinistic and Nazi racial theories. Or, as Mark Twain once put it,
there are lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Murray's arguments are built around IQ tests, which are not accepted by colleges or universities for admissions because they cannot accurately measure a student's potential to perform in college. Because a single sample test taken on a single date cannot accurately measure the potential of a person over a lifetime. But that didn't stop Charles Murray from producing a parade of books, all defending the idea that some classes of people simply deserve to get all the marbles based on biased intelligence tests. Culminating in the book Facing Reality in 2022, where he basically states society must now accept the stupidity of people of color and their inherent moral inferiority, feeding the voracious appetite of conservative readers who were predisposed to believe his biased views in the first place. Laying the groundwork for Donald Trump claims that Haitian immigrants were stealing people's dogs and eating them. Of course, Murray's premise that non-whites are of lower character depends on how you measure the character of men. For example, is suffocating a man without benefit of trial a sign of good character? Is repeatedly exploiting the poor using fraudulent financial practices a sign of good character? Is murdering a black child for walking through a white neighborhood a sign of good character? Is intentionally marketing a highly addictive drug, resulting in hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths, a sign of good character? Is shooting a black man in front of his child because he was trying to cooperate with a traffic stop a sign of good character? Is marketing and selling weapons that continue to be used to mow down school-age children a sign of good character? Or how about hiding flaws in the planes you're delivering, resulting in 346 deaths? How about robbing the elderly of their retirement accounts through financial fraud? Or sheltering all your income in overseas accounts, leaving the middle class to shoulder your tax burdens? Or running a white slavery racket and using your political connections to cover it all up? President George W. Bush deliberately shut down FBI efforts to pursue wealthy white-collar criminals, citing 911 priorities, causing white-collar crime, mostly the province of white males, to skyrocket, which points out the biggest flaw in Murray's argument. It places great value on measuring cognitive intelligence and absolutely none on measuring character. And what do these racist texts by police officers say about the character of the officers that sent them? Made more egregious by the fact that it is white males that commit most mass shootings in America, not to mention the deaths caused by white-collar criminals who are seldom prosecuted. Of course, no one is excusing black crime, merely making the case that the justice system is biased in favor of white criminals. The truth is that Charles Murray's Facing Reality is just another example in a long history of racist propaganda intended to justify the accumulation of wealth among a select few. White slavers spread the idea that God had cursed the black race to justify their exploitation of the slaves. They said that segregation was God's will, although they didn't let that stop them from bringing black slaves here from Africa. They said white brains were larger, and that proved whites were smarter. Never mind that white women's brains were smaller and that whales had bigger brains than white men. They said that evolution's survival of the fittest also applied to societies, although no formal proof existed of this. Nazi eugenic theory stated that Jews were an inferior race, though Jewish citizens had won a large number of Nobel Prizes. Madison Grant created the white replacement theory, which has been resurrected of late by right-wing extremists. And the movie Birth of a Nation, which painted former slaves as wild beasts out for the flesh of white women, would establish a pattern of casting black characters in demeaning roles, which paved the way for the original insurrection that was intended to overthrow FDR's presidency and stop the New Deal from happening. With the practical objective of placing limits on immigration, placing limits on social programs, promoting limits on population growth, promoting mass incarceration, and ultimately enacting passive or active forms of genocide. But everything requires a plan, doesn't it? Psychology Today magazine lists the steps of dehumanization as to first state that the target group has subpar intelligence. Secondly, to use infestation analogies. Thirdly, to compare target groups to animals. Fourthly, to use threats of violence against target groups. Fifth, to use mass incarceration to remove target groups from society. This attempt to dehumanize those in the lower classes is epitomized in the recent book Unhumans, a book endorsed by Trump VP candidate J.D. Vance and Steve Bannon, who provided the foreword for the book. The book has been endorsed by a marching army of millionaires and promotes the idea that those in the lower classes are not truly human because they advocate for the sharing of resources. But let's not lose track of what all of this smoke and all of these mirrors are masking in reality. The modern conservative is engaged in one of man's oldest exercises in moral philosophy. That is, the search for a superior moral justification for selfishness. And thus, Charles Murray has been working hard to deliver that justification for selfishness. We can put whatever label on it we want, social Darwinism, or whatever. It's simply a thinly veiled argument for selfish behavior. And Charles Murray is just another hard-working magician, trying hard to pull the wool over the eyes of regular working people, and protecting the interests of the rich and powerful. An inconvenient side effect for Murray and others advocating the use of IQ tests to segment society is to reveal that it is Asians who scored the highest on such tests. There is no record that Murray or his cohorts are interested in acknowledging that China or Japan are thus superior cultures.
Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days.